Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting for Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. And just before I call the meeting to order, I just wanted to let everybody know that this week we joined communities across Alberta in recognizing Disability Service Professionals Appreciation Week, held from May 19th to the 25th. It is important time to acknowledge the tremendous work done by more than 15,000 dedicated professionals across our province who support individuals with developmental disabilities. These individuals play an essential role in helping others live with dignity, independence, and purpose. Their efforts, whether through home living supports, respite care, employment training, or specialized assistance, are foundational to building inclusive communities. I also wanted to thank my fellow members of council who were able to wear yellow this afternoon as a visible sign of our respect and appreciation for these vital service providers. Your participation helps shine a light on the meaningful impact these professionals have on the lives of so many Albertans. I'll call the meeting to order at 5:01 p.m. First item on the agenda, land acknowledgement. The town of Coaldale acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot peoples of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot peoples past, present, and future while recognizing their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The town of Coaldale is also home to Métis District 1 Foothills. Agenda item 1.2, conflict of interest declaration, pecuniary and non-pecuniary. Are there any in the room this afternoon? None declared, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2.1 under acceptance of today's agenda for May 20th, 2025. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? I'm just going to make one slight change prior to doing the public hearing. I'm just going to jump ahead to agenda item 7.1, the land use bylaw amendment. Seeing no other additions to the agenda, could I get someone to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Avery makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to adoption of the previous minutes. Agenda item 3.1, we have the regular council meeting minutes from April 28th, 2025. Are there any errors or omissions in those minutes? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Rees.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. Just a friendly amendment on 3.1. It says Councillor Rees, and then right below it, it says Deputy Mayor Lisa Rees. If we could just correct that, please.
Thank you. I'll let our municipal clerk make those changes. Any further errors or omissions? Could I get someone to make a motion that council, I should say, adopt the regular council meeting minutes from April 28th, 2025 as presented? Or as amended, sorry. Councillor Beekman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 3.2, the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for May 5th, 2025. Were there any errors or omissions in those minutes? Seeing none, could I get someone to make a motion that council adopt the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from May 7th, 2025 as presented? Councillor Pickering makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3.3, special council meeting minutes from May 5th, 2025. Were there any errors or omissions in those minutes? Seeing none, could I get someone to make a motion that council adopt the special council meeting minutes from May 5th, 2025 as presented? Deputy Mayor Rees makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 7.1, we have the land use bylaw amendment 922-P-05-25 regarding first reading pertaining to Malloy Landing R-1A overlay. And we have our Director of Growth and Investment and Deputy CAO, Cameron Mills, presenting. Cam, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mayor Van Ryn. So what we have today for Council's consideration is Land Use Bylaw Amendment 922-P-05-25, which is the Malloy Landing R1A overlay. And fundamentally what we're doing here, so Council's had the opportunity, I'm sure, to review the report. If Council will recall, we made some special considerations for the Malloy Landing subdivision back at the time of the approval of the Malloy Landing overlay plan, which was approved several months ago. And then there were some changes that were made for those for the regulations governing development within that area, specific both to the R1A and R2 zonings. Moving forward, we had passed previously an amendment or an overlay plan within the land use bylaw specific to the R2 zoning, but we'd never actually done so with respect to the R1A zoning. Instead, the folks who make the decisions on the development permits have the sets of rules that are within the land use bylaw, and then they also have the regulations that exist within the Malloy Landing outline plan. So you recall when we passed the outline plan, the concept was to allow for the R1A zoning, but to allow for lots of 40-foot width with some consideration for reducing the ability for secondary suites to only allowing them where access can be granted through rear lanes. We also allowed for the consideration for side yard setbacks to be reduced within that district from 5 feet to 4 feet. And additionally, we allowed for the houses to be pushed slightly forward from the 25-foot setback to a 20-foot setback where there is not going to be the provision of front parking, because the determination was without a front driveway, there wasn't the need for that much space. And so with the development permits now coming in, our development officer requires basically to look at two sets of documents with those regulations. And so what we're proposing here is to amalgamate those rules together into a single document to provide for a little more administrative efficiency. So that's fundamentally what we're talking about here. There's nothing within the bylaw that isn't already approved within that overlay plan that was discussed as part of Council's consideration of that several months ago. And with that, I'd be happy to answer Council's questions on the subject.
Thank you. I'll open up to members of Council. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, could I get someone to entertain making a motion that Council provide first reading of Land Use Amendment Bylaw 922-P-05-25 as presented? Councillor Beekman makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving back up to agenda item 5.1, a public hearing. I'll call the public hearing to order at 5:09 p.m. The intent of this public hearing is regarding agenda item 5.1, Land Use Bylaw Amendment Malloy Landing R-1A Overlay, Bylaw 922-P-05-25. And at this time, I would ask our Director of Growth and Investment and Deputy CAO, Cameron Mills, to introduce the subject matter of this public hearing.
Thank you very much, Mayor Van Ryn. So the subject matter is tied directly to the previous agenda item that we had discussed with respect to issue 7.1. In this case, the only affected landowner is Shift, having retained ownership of all of those parcels. So they have obviously full support of the proposal. And so in this case, again, this is an issue that has been fundamentally discussed publicly a number of times. From an administration's perspective, what we're really proposing here is about efficiency and an administrative change that will allow us to do our job a little bit more effectively.
Thank you. As the presenter just mentioned, we just talked about this previously under 7.1. Are there any further questions or comments? Councillor Chapman and then Councillor Avery.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Van Ryan, and through to Cam Mills. Thank you so much for bringing this forward. My only question to you is maybe for any listeners online, if you might be able to help us understand accommodating current market trends that might assist us with making some determination as to how Shift is planning to move this project forward.
Yeah, and so the concept here is fundamentally that within the R1A districts, we have three land use districts within, fundamentally three urban style land use districts within the bylaw, R1C, R1B, and R1A. The idea here being that within the Malloy Landing subdivision, we wanted to test out some changes to the R1A zoning that would be perhaps more appropriate in the current economic climate of 2025. And so, for example, a minimum lot size of 50 feet exists currently in the R1A district. We certainly have the opportunity to consider some lots up to that size, but the current economic reality of a 50-foot lot is, generally speaking, an impossibility of creating new housing on a lot of that size that's going to be affordable for anywhere below, say, the top 10% of income earners within the region. So generally speaking, with a lot of that size, we would forecast a new build house to be somewhere in the $700,000 range or higher, whereas a 40-foot lot allows for a house that would maybe hit more like the $500,000 range. Still certainly not an inexpensive proposition, but certainly something that is more affordable to a broader portion of the population. What we also found is that the changes over time, when we look at it in terms of the competitive landscape, we look at what builders are building more broadly within the region. And so we look, for example, at the new subdivision in South Lethbridge. South Lethbridge generally being, the premium portion of Lethbridge from a real estate development perspective. And when we look at the new subdivision that's going in there off of 43rd Street, we're seeing lots ranging from 32 feet in width at the low end up to 40 feet at the generally at the maximum for that particular subdivision, and we're seeing houses range from the 400s to obviously well into the $700,000 and $800,000 price range within that. So this is what builders within the region are looking to build. This is what builders in the region are looking to buy, and so we want to balance Coaldale's requirement or preference generally to be a little bit on the larger side relative to what Lethbridge is offering, while also providing an opportunity for builders within the region, to take existing plans that they have and make them fit within our regulations. And really what we're hearing from the building community is that they just don't have the capacity to do 50-foot lots at any type of scale.
Thank you. Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've got a couple questions, if I may. So for advertising of this, how was it advertised? Because this is kind of a different procedure where we're doing first reading, then an open house, and second and third reading. So a little bit confused on that. And then with this 4-foot side yard setback, is this now going to start affecting our fire department response in high intensity residential fires? And how is this in the future going to cost the tax base of Coaldale? We're going to have to do a substation over there, or we're going to meet the 10-minute response.
Thank you. So as you recall, during our discussions during the overlay plan phase, we did include circulation internally, and that this was discussed as part of our regulation with the fire department. There should be no changes. There are no infringements on the safety code with respect to fire, so we have no concerns with respect to that. One of the differences here with respect to the side yard setback, previously we had a 5-foot in place. We're looking at 4 foot here. With the change being that there would be no reasonable provision for substantial variance of that, right? Because then you start to get into code issues then if you're getting below that. So what we're really doing here is providing for an opportunity for builders to meet that 4-foot setback, but not less. So no, there is not going to be any additional requirement for fire services as a result of that. With respect to the advertising of this public hearing, so again, because this isn't involving a change to a specific lot, this is a broader bylaw change. And on top of it being a broader bylaw change, it's a broader bylaw change that is specific to one very clear area. So it's a response to only that area within the Northwest area, ASP area, and the only R1A lots within that area are owned by a single source. And so there's really only one landowner who is directly impacted at this time. So it's not something where we're, say, mailing the document to hundreds of people because there are no affected parties, but at the same time, there are no neighbors because, again, it is not specific to those lots. So what we have is the public hearing discussed or open for feedback on our Let's Connect toolkit, and that's the method we chose to provide that circulation.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. Through to Cam. So Cam, that 25-foot offset, that is from the utility, our utility offset? Like we have that 5 feet in front always?
Yes, with respect to the 20-foot setback, yes. And so the current regulation is a 25-foot setback from the front property line. The reasoning for that is largely that you can have a car parked on a driveway that's 25 feet long and still not be encroaching. Obviously there's some vehicles that are longer than 25, but generally speaking, it allows for parking to exist between the building and not. And what we're proposing here is that 20 feet allows the building to move forward slightly in order to have more of the lot, the much more usable space in the backyard rather than the front, where there is not going to be the provision of front parking. So there are certain areas within the Malloy Landing Area Structure Plan that are not going to have front driveways, and for that reason, it just doesn't make sense to be using that much space for a front yard.
Thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor, and through to Cam, just following up on Councillor Pickering's question. So moving the building forward allows for more backyard spaces, kind of the theory that we're going with, or the plan, I should say. And second to that, we had agreed that those lots would be serviced with a rear lane. Is that correct?
That's correct. So any of the lots that don't call for a front driveway have rear lane access. And then the other factor that factors into the rear lane is right now the R1A zoning allows for secondary suites anywhere that the parking requirements can be met. And what we're instead saying is that secondary suites are only allowed where there is the ability to provide for rear parking. So not only do they have to meet the general parking requirements of 2 parking stalls per dwelling unit, but they also have to have a lane in order to be considered.
Thank you for that clarity.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the gallery this afternoon that's here for this public hearing that wishes to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to ask our council if they have sufficient information to make a decision on land use bylaw amendment Malloy Landing R-1A overlay regarding bylaw 922-P05-25. Seeing no more questions, comments, I'll call the public hearing close at 5:19 p.m. And Cameron, I'll just get you to stay there, and we're going to jump ahead to agenda item 7.4 regarding the same bylaw amendment 922-P-05-25 regarding second and third reading. Is there any further questions or comments by members of council regarding this overlay? Seeing none, could I get someone to entertain making a motion that council provides second reading of Land Use Bylaw Amendment 922-P-05-25? Councillor Pickering makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And finally, that council provide third and final reading of Land Use Bylaw Amendment 922-P-05-25.
Mayor Van Ryn, just one point. In order to do that, and I apologize, the recommendation doesn't include this information, we need to have a vote to consider third reading. So the vote is in order to do 3 readings of the bylaw at a single hearing, we have to first vote to go to third reading, which requires unanimous approval of council. And failing to do so, we would have to come back to third reading at the following meeting.
Thank you. That is a good catch. So just for our CAO then, Kaylin, so we're going to call for unanimous consent on this one then? Okay, who cares to make the motion? Deputy Mayor Reese makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And then finally, third and final reading of Land Use Bylaw Amendment 922-P-05-25. Who cares to sponsor that resolution? Councillor Beekman. Any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Cam.
Thank you very much.
Moving back up to agenda item 7.2, we have borrowing bylaw 919-B-04-25 regarding second and third reading, and we have our Chief Financial Officer and Deputy CAO Kyle Beauchamp presenting. Kyle, whenever you're ready.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, so again, we have second and third reading of borrowing bylaw 919-B-04-25 for the sanitary trunk line. So this is after Council approved first reading at the April 28th meeting. Subsequent to that, the bylaw was advertised in the Sunny South News on the May 6th and the May 13th edition. We did receive one question, but there were no objections, further objections or any questions received on the bylaw. With that being said, just turning it back to Council for consideration of second and third reading.
Thank you. I'll open up members of Council. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, could I get someone to entertain making a motion that Council provides second reading of borrowing bylaw 919-B-04-25 regarding the sanitary trunk line? Councillor Chapman makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And finally, that Council provide third and final reading of borrowing bylaw 919-B-04-25. Who wants to make the motion?
I gotta just have one question for Kyle.
Yes, I won't call the question though, so you want to make the motion? Okay. Motion on the floor by Council Avery, and he has a question or comment.
Yes, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Kyle. Can you just inform council what the inquiry was?
It was just a question of if the item is already in the budget, how come we have to do this? So it was just a matter of clarifying how the funding for this project works within the capital budget.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Council Avery for third and final reading. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7.3, the Council Procedural Bylaw Amendment 921-GE-04-25. And we have our Director of Corporate and Strategic Initiatives, Spencer Croil, presenting. Spencer, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to you and Council. As you may recall, this item being amendments to the current procedural bylaw, the amended bylaw number being 921-GE-04-25, was first brought to Council on April 28th, just a few weeks ago. The primary intent of the amendment was to help the Council procedural bylaw align with recent changes through the Municipal Government Act to formalizing how the public can participate in public hearings, specifically the idea of formalizing that the public can participate by electronic means in public hearings. So in addition to having already had this provided as an option for quite some time, we've now added a few different elements to the front end, that being our website and our public engagement webpage. We've also brought forward these amendments by opening the procedural bylaw. We've also allowed for other housekeeping amendments, as you may call them, to be included as well, such as changing reference from Her Majesty the Queen to His Majesty the King, and referencing that we only have one council meeting in July and August, and then one more piece that was related to the appointment of deputy mayor in item 4.4 of the bylaw. There's a request this evening that all three readings be passed on this as well, if it suits council.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for our presenter? Seeing none, could I get someone to entertain making a motion that council provide first reading of council procedural bylaw 921-GE-04-25 as presented? Councillor Chapman makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And now I need someone to entertain making a motion that council provide second reading of council procedural bylaw 921-GE-04-25 as presented. Deputy Mayor Reese makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now I need someone to sponsor that council provide unanimous consent to hold all three readings in one meeting for council procedural bylaw 921-GE-04-25. Councillor Saylor makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And finally, I need someone to sponsor a motion that council provide third and final reading of council procedural bylaw 921-GE-04-25. Councillor Chapman makes that motion. Any further discussion? Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Spencer. On 4.4C, where we changed following year to term, can that be interpreted as appoint deputy mayor for the term of 4 years? Or it should be term of a length?
What's the number again?
4.4C.
Through the chair to Councillor Avery, that's a matter of interpretation, as you've noted. And if it's something that needs to be adjusted, possibly it could be completed through a friendly amendment to the bylaw.
So Councillor Avery accepts a friendly amendment.
I do, yes.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Chapman made that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7.5, the land use bylaw amendment 923-P-05-25 regarding first reading, election signs. And again, we have our Director of Growth and Investment and Deputy CAO, Cameron Mills, presenting. Cam, whenever you're ready.
with respect to an amendment to the land use bylaw to consider for a revision to the regulations governing election signs. And so administration has been directed to prepare an amending bylaw to revise the regulations pertaining to election signs, which is to say political posters. That took place, I believe, at the last meeting of council. And so in order to do that, the Land Use Bylaw Schedule 13, Section 5, which is signs not requiring a permit, restricts the placement of election signs on town-owned property, but provides for allowances for signs posted on boulevards or road rights-of-way adjoining parks and playing fields for those types of signs. So again, anyone running for office has the ability currently to place election signs on those public areas as defined as such. And so the proposed amendment would prohibit election signs from being posted on boulevards and road rights-of-way adjoining parks and playing fields. The idea being that election signs would be limited to private property, so people would certainly be welcome to put them in their front yards and would not require a permit in order to do so. So the proposed amendment fundamentally changes that statement to remove the statement "but" may be posted on, and instead to say "including." So it shall say signs shall not be posted within the property boundaries of any existing town-owned land or facility, or any sidewalk or road right-of-way adjacent to town-owned lands or facilities, including boulevards and road rights-of-way adjoining parks and playing fields. These are similar to regulations that have been adopted by the City of Lethbridge. So with that proposed amendment, election signs will continue to be allowed on private property in accordance with provisions set out in the Land Use Bylaw. As required in the Municipal Government Act, a public hearing is required to consider this issue, and so we're proposing to do so, advertise such a hearing to do so at the next available council meeting, if provided that the bylaw receives first reading this evening.
Thank you. I'll open it up to members of council. Any questions or comments? So I appreciate your bringing this forward. This kind of stems from the federal election that was just held, and then we had quite a bit of vandalism within the town of Coaldale with some of the candidate signs. And I believe that if someone allows a sign to be put on their front yard, they'll look after that sign. It'll show some respect for the candidates. So I appreciate you bringing that forward. Seeing no more questions, comments, could I get someone to make a motion that council provide first reading of Land Use Bylaw Amendment 923-P-05-25 as presented, and set the public hearing date and time as July 2nd, 2025 at 5 p.m. Councillor Beekman makes that motion. Any more discussion? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just speaking in favor of the motion, just for clarity's sake, that this will include all elections, including federal, provincial, and municipal.
That is correct. Deputy Mayor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. Just for clarity, it says here that the public hearing date will be June 30th, and you said July 2nd.
We're moving the regular council meeting from July 30th to July 2nd to accommodate Tabor's 30th anniversary, I should say. Seeing no more questions, there is a motion on the floor by Councillor Beekman that council provide first reading. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to new business. Agenda item 8.1. We have development application 2025-072 regarding commercial plaza located at 1801 and 1809 30th Avenue. And again, we have our Director of Growth and Investment and Deputy CAO Cameron Mills presenting. Cam, whenever you're ready.
Thank you.
Just before you start, if I could get Clayton just to let us know if we're going to have somebody speaking to this one remotely. Okay. And how do you know if that person is here? Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Cam.
Sorry, and thank you. Clayton, can I just confirm who is currently in attendance? Okay. Thank you very much.
And just to be clear, I need to leave my microphone on so people can hear.
Okay. So can I have it shown on the screen, please? So council has been prepared, has a staff report provided as part of their package. And in lieu of going through that verbatim, what I'm going to do is go through a bit of a presentation to provide an outline of administration's work on this particular file. So as council will recall, development permit 2025-072 has to do with the development application for 2 parcels of land located in the northwest area structure plan area. And so I'm going to provide you with an area overview, some background to the application, a description of the proposal, its alignment with some planning documents, and then provide for some decision options for council. And then prior to making any decisions, we also have some folks in attendance who are able to speak to the matter, both surrounding landowners as well as the proponent themselves. I will remain as a resource to address any questions that may arise from that. So first of all, the plan location shown here as highlighted with the, I'm going to call that a mauve oval there in the southwestern corner. The subject lands, generally speaking, are located between 18th Avenue and Highway 3, directly east of 30th Street, within the portion of the town encompassed within the Northwest Area Structure Plan, generally known as Malloy Landing. The Northwest Area Structure Plan provides a framework for the future development of all of these lands in the area. These lands within the subject area were annexed into Coaldale in 2018 in order to accommodate Coaldale's continued growth and expansion over a projected 25-year time horizon. The subject area specifically is in the southwest corner of the planning area and is identified within the Northwest Area Structure Plan as being within a special development area of the broader area structure plan. So the entire sort of yellowish orange triangle in the southern portion of the area, everything south of 18th Avenue in this case, is identified within the document as being within this special development area. The subject area, as you will see, is directly south of the proposed commercial and mixed use area of the area structure plan and lies directly east of an existing heavy commercial operation as well as an acreage outside of the area structure plan area, which is the Boss Sod area. And it's also west of an existing acreage, which is the Allen acreage. The subject lands also abut the CP rail line, which likewise abuts the Allen and Boss lands to the south. So to provide some background on consideration of the broader area, we go back to 2018 where the town completed an annexation of the area lands following approximately a 2-year public process with the county as well as area landowners. Then in 2022, the town procured ISL engineering and planning services to commence work on an area structure plan. Fast forward to February of 2023, the draft area structure plan was presented to the area landowners for their feedback, which occurred in a meeting on February 9th. And then in May of 2023, first reading of the Northwest Area Structure Plan bylaw occurred, and at that point, further public consultation was requested. In June of 2023, a second stakeholder meeting, so direct meeting with stakeholders, occurred on June 1st of that year. Revisions coming from that direct consultation with landowners occurred, and a public open house, which was open to all residents of Coaldale, occurred on June 6th. Following that, a public hearing where, again, all residents of Coaldale were able to provide input on the plan occurred on June 26, 2023, following which second and third reading of the area structure plan were approved. Moving forward to October 2024, a rezoning application was presented to council for first reading on October 28, 2024. Following that, a public hearing as well as second and third reading for the rezoning were considered on November 13th of 2024. Feedback from the public input guides limitation of uses within the proposed DC district to prohibit certain commercial uses. And so, as you recall, the rezoning that was considered provided for commercial uses within the area, however, limited those uses to exclude certain more intense uses like hotels and bars. And as this was determined, those uses were determined to be inappropriate for the area. Moving forward to April of 2025, the town set up a direct consultation between the proponent developer of those lands and the adjacent landowners, and those landowners who spoke at the April 4th, 2025 rezoning hearing. And in May of 2025, consideration by council of the public development proposal at a public meeting, which is today, and then should today result in an approved or general concurrence with the permit, we would move forward to MPC for consideration of an additional issue as it relates to a requested height waiver. So taking a look at the zoning bylaw directly, what you have here is a site plan that was proposed as a potential site plan during the rezoning hearings, to recall, dating back to that hearing some months ago. There was a proposal for a mix of uses from the commercial C1 and C2 zoning. However, higher impact uses, again, hotel and bar and so on, were not included, as well as gas station. And the initial site plan sketch provided here showed it primarily an east building layout along the eastern edge of the property with approximately 75,000 square feet of total building area, a single primary access point along 30th Street, so highlighted in this sort of bottom third, if you will, of 30th Street, and called for the paving of the utility right-of-way shown in the hatched gray marked area to be incorporated into the parking lot of the development site. Since then, since that hearing, administration has been going back and forth with the proponent to try to address a number of planning concerns. In addition to that, we've had the opportunity to engage in direct public consultation with adjacent landowners. The proposal that is ultimately coming to council is for approximately 62,000 square feet of retail space, which is approximately a 20% reduction on what was initially considered. There is a north-south orientation of the building, so we have the two larger buildings located in the northern portion of the development facing south, with the majority of the parking happening in the middle of the proposed lots, with two smaller buildings located in the southern portion. In addition to that, the proponent has proposed the addition of an 8-foot high wooden fence along the northern 50 feet of the adjacent eastern boundary. In addition to that, the provision of chain link fence south from that point to the property boundary. The provision for a walking path along the southern boundary to connect to existing walking infrastructure is also provided. So that would be shown as the light yellow portion along the south. I want to highlight that the proposal does not include the construction of a walking path. Administration's position is that create a walking path now while the Allen property remains in its current form is unreasonable. It's a walking path to nowhere, basically. But what we wanted to ensure is that if at some point the acreage property to the east is redeveloped into a more commercial style use, the opportunity to connect this parcel with the walking path that connects to the pedestrian crossing of Highway 3 exists within the broader planning scope. And so we wanted to make sure that the developer acknowledged that in their proposal to provide for the opportunity for the town's construction of that pedestrian infrastructure should we decide to do so at some future point. And so that's provided here as well. Also, landscaping provisions in excess of the land use bylaw requirement. And so what the developer or the proponent has found is that there is no reasonable possibility of developing the pipeline infrastructure. ATCO's, as you recall from consideration of the Northwest Area Structure Plan's multifamily issues, we've found that ATCO tends to be fairly difficult to move forward with in terms of getting them to allow for the paving over top of that infrastructure, despite the fact that that is something it has been done previously. And so what the developer is proposing here is along the northern boundary, both the landscaping of that plus the installation of a stormwater management facility, a small localized one there to the north, providing for approximately 150 feet of what fundamentally amounts to landscaped area along the northern boundary, and then along the western boundary, what is approximately 70 feet there from the road edge, so substantially in excess of what is typical. Additional considerations, landscaping, again, along the utility right-of-way will be relatively basic. So when we talk about landscaping within that ATCO right-of-way, we wouldn't be talking about substantial planting because ATCO's concern largely has to do with ensuring accessibility of that. And we don't want them digging or having to cut down trees to access their pipeline. However, additional planting will be required along the western boundary. However, not shown on the drawing here, the idea being there that we'll want to see final drawings for the construction of 30th Street before we make decisions at that level of specificity. Exact landscaping to be determined based on that final approval. And just to provide clarity, as in line with the land use bylaw, all provisions for landscaping will be irrigated. All of the proposed uses proposed here fit within the guidelines of the DC zoning as permitted uses. And so from that perspective, the bylaw currently provides us administratively, technically, with the opportunity to approve the permit. However, we have a commitment to come forward and have this discussion at the council table, which is a commitment we've made to the adjacent landowners, and we want to make sure we honor that. And so that's what tonight provides us with that opportunity. Should council move forward with providing consent to move forward with approval of the plan, then we will provide for the opportunity to consider the height waiver at an upcoming MPC. So that would be specific only to one building and the consideration strictly of the height of that building at that particular time. So again, just to provide a little bit of side-by-side, the proposal on the left is version 2 of the proposal. So versions, I believe, 2 and 3 were shown at the council rezoning. And then the version to the right is version 10 of the guideline. And that's the ultimate result of the back and forth, both between administration and the proponent, as well as the discussions with adjacent landowners over the last few months. So taking a look at planning documents, the Northwest Area Structure Plan has guidelines for special development areas, and some of the information from there is as follows, that the purpose of the special development area is to accommodate a compatible mix of commercial and residential uses along the south boundary of the plan within the limitations and constraints unique to this area. And council will recall when we were discussing that special development area, the idea being that the intensity of the development within the special development area will generally be lower on the narrower eastern edge and will sort of increase in intensity as it moves towards the west, where lots become larger and deeper and also become closer to what are ultimately major road and transportation corridors. It is anticipated to accommodate a use of higher density residential uses or commercial development, which will complement the proposed commercial area north of 18th Avenue. That portions of the east side are significantly constrained by parcel depth and are anticipated to accommodate lower density uses and unique development opportunities compatible with a residential neighborhood. That proposed developments within the special development area will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, and that a linear open space corridor located in the center of the special development area provides a strong multimodal connection to 26th Street and the High School Recreation Center. So that, and again, that is reference to that north-south walking path that's been constructed in order to allow pedestrian flow from South Coaldale north into the to access the school and recreation site. And given the development challenges in the area, direct control districts may be used to define the unique nature of the development area and identify relaxations not available within standard land use districts in the land use bylaw. And from that, we have the direct control zoning in place currently. Other notable policies, 4.4.2, proposed uses shall be limited to commercial and residential uses compatible with the area and the future vision of the plan. 4.4.4, direct control zoning will be permitted where standard land use districts do not provide adequate flexibility to address site limitations. 4.4.7, preservation of existing trees shall be encouraged where feasible. And 4.4.8, enhanced landscaping may be required to provide a buffer to existing low-density residential parcels. I think it also behooves us to talk about off-site infrastructure improvements, which I think are an important part of the broader consideration of this development of this part of town. So specifically looking at 30th Street and Highway 3. First of all, signal timing optimization is still ongoing. So we do have some challenges currently with traffic flow here at Highway 3 and 30th Street. And this is a continuous process with Alberta Transportation that, when done properly, can significantly improve traffic flow. And that's something we continue to work on with their engineers. Second, specific with respect to the upgrading of 30th Street as well as the intersection of 30th Street and Highway 3, this project is a levy project. And so the development here, in this case, provides financial contribution to the project, but the project itself is undertaken by the municipality. And so we have off-site levy funds which are paid by developments such as this, as well as development charges which contribute towards the project as a whole. But in this case, the developer is not directly responsible for the project. And so the reason projects are undertaken in this way, when you consider, Highway 3 and 30th Street, this is a project that ultimately multiple landowners and multiple development projects ultimately both contribute towards the requirement for it as well as benefit from the project. And so levy projects allow for the municipality to undertake that while shifting the cost of that burden largely onto new developments. So council will recall that our off-site levies were updated fairly recently to reflect the higher cost of infrastructure improvements, and so we feel that we have that in place. Approval of the development proposal will expedite those upgrades. And so currently speaking, the development, if you look at the off-site levy document, this project is considered, generally speaking, for the major upgrades have to, I believe, tie to about approximately 2032. Allowing for this development to go forward and collection of both those levies as well as development charges will also push that project further forward, as discussed recently at our budget deliberations in the fall, and which will factor in to our next budget deliberations in the coming fall. The design of improvements is based on engineering guidelines as well as Alberta transportation requirements, and an updated traffic impact assessment is being undertaken by the developer and will inform Alberta Transportation's minimum requirements. What we provided here, sort of a basic drawing to show what the next stage of development of this area will be. So currently, the southbound traffic along 30th Street has fundamentally a single lane, which allows for traffic to move straight, which is to say south, turn left, and turn right. And what will be the next phase will include a straight, sort of a dedicated left-hand turning lane for southbound traffic. That will also require some expansion of 30th Street itself to provide for a wider road in order to accommodate that. In addition, we should consider that we're also going to be seeing the paving of 30th Street north of the 18th Avenue intersection to connect to the 16th Avenue extension, which is going to be occurring within the plan area. And so you're going to be pulling a fair amount of traffic that is currently coming up 30th Street and turning onto 18th Avenue. A reasonable chunk of that is now not going to be on 18th Avenue, but is instead going to be diverted north and then accessing the School Fresh site from 16th Avenue. So that'll have a relatively significant impact on traffic in that area as well. Lastly, looking at the rezoning bylaw, or looking at the zoning requirements. And so permitted uses include accessory buildings and structures, business support services, convenience stores, drive-in or drive-through restaurants or other eating establishments, financial institutions, which is to say banks, doctors' offices, personal services, businesses, pet care services, retail and retail large-scale uses, restaurants, shopping centers, centers and a diversity of signs. Discretionary uses in this case would be the warehouse retail district, childcare facilities, liquor stores, another diversity of signs, and then veterinary clinics. In this case, the proposal itself largely falls within the shopping center definition as it stands. Also some retail or retail large scale that could potentially be applied to that as well, though that is really a subset of the shopping center definition. And so from an administration's perspective, provided that the setback requirements are all met, which they are, the permit that is being applied for, fundamentally speaking, is permitted based on what was discussed as within the zoning at our previous hearings back in the fall. So from decision options, and I believe I had a error in the report itself. There are fundamentally three options. The options fundamentally come down to approve, don't approve, or table. To approve, we would recommend recommendations 1, 2, and 3, which is to approve the conceptual plan confirming administration's authorization to issue a permit subject to conditions deemed necessary to provide for orderly and appropriate development. So those conditions, for example, would include that the developer enter into a development agreement with the town of Coaldale. That development agreement in turn would have a number of conditions with respect to how to go about tying into municipal infrastructure for the payment of development charges and offsite levies and so on and so forth. Second, provide direction to administration on any specific conditions of development that council feels are necessary to address any issues arising from information contained either in the agenda package as provided or which is brought to light as part of the public discourse this evening. And third, to direct administration to move forward with bringing the application to the next available meeting of the Municipal Planning Commission for consideration of the question of the building height variance. Council also has the opportunity to provide commentary on that issue should they so choose. Option 4 is to not approve the conceptual plan of the development application and further to instruct administration not to proceed with the application to the Municipal Planning Commission at the June 11th, 2025 meeting. And option 5, to table the conceptual plan pending the receipt of additional information. So that is the end of administration's presentation. I'm happy to address any questions council might have, and alternatively, happy to address any questions that result from any of our other presenters this evening.
Thank you, Cameron. Can you just go back to the motion option, the first one again, just to make sure I captured that?
Sure. So what I'm showing here, the combination of options 1, 2, and 3 collectively will provide administration with direction to move forward with approving the plan. However, I want to point out that option 2 is really an option where if there's anything specific that council wants to see as part of the conditions of development permit, that council has the opportunity to provide that to us. Otherwise, administration will issue conditions on a development permit, just as we do for all development permits, which we feel are appropriate for orderly and appropriate development of the area. So if there's anything very specific that council wants to see, we can include that as part of item number 2 there, and that will provide administration with the direction we need to ensure that that's included in the permit itself.
For the ease of clarity, then I'll break it into the 3.
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for our presenter? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor, and through to Cam. Thank you so much for all this hard work that you've done on this. My only question to you, the version that you're looking at proposing for council's consideration is version 10, is that right, for the landscape?
Correct, yeah. So that is the version with the pond on the north, the 2 buildings in the northern portion, and then 2 smaller buildings on the southern portion.
So just again, then the reason for moving the properties all the way around like that was just to change the direction of entrance and exits for the for the property?
So there were a number of considerations. Part of it had to do with best accommodating stormwater management. Part of it had to do with providing for the dual accesses, which we think are an important part of the proposal. The southern access, I didn't have an opportunity to speak to that. The southern access being of the right-in, right-out variety to ensure that we don't have traffic turning left and providing congestion there closer to the highway. So providing for that opportunity, also to pull some of the intensity away from the property to the east, so to have the entire row of development to be backing relatively closely to the property to the east felt a little, in my opinion, to be placing a little bit of a burden there. This is provides for a better opportunity for future connectivity should expansion to the east occur. And so it's easier to think about this site design in terms of incorporating the parcel to the east and potentially also the properties owned by Mr. Casco to the east, extending potentially all the way out to the pathway. Should that occur at some point in the next decade or two, certainly not a requirement. But there are a number of reasons fundamentally why we think this is superior, and ultimately the proponent was happy to agree to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? So Cam, can you just update council based on the 2 letters that were received? I see that the developer answered some of the questions brought forward by Bosscapes, and then the representative for Liz Allen. Can you tell us where we're at with those, getting answers to those questions?
Thank you. And so we have the proponent here. So the public engagement, the direct landowner consultation that occurs, the town is fundamentally just ensuring that the meeting occurs, right? And so we had an opportunity to bring Miss Allen and her son Brody into a room with the developers' representatives, just as we did with the boss representatives. And what we engaged with then is the opportunity for both of those parties to speak directly to the proponent. And so with respect to questions like that, my recommendation was that we have that discussion directly with both of those parties to see how they feel that was addressed between them.
Thank you. And then my other question is, we've been talking lots about the upgrades on 30th, and on 18th, the only comment that I picked up was to do with the pathway that would come at some point based on what Ms. Allen plans on doing with her property.
So we are looking at it from a pedestrian connectivity standpoint. That's really actually on the southern portion of the boundary where we're looking at the potential for the walking path. So that would provide for connectivity between the walking path to the east and this along the southern portion of the boundary rather than along 18th Avenue. There is no, based on the engineering that we're looking at, both with respect to the Malloy Landing subdivision as well as this, there's no necessary requirement to upgrade 18th Avenue by any sort of substantial measure. That being said, it's certainly a project that council can undertake. It's simply not something that we view as being sort of necessary from an engineering perspective. But if council wants to budget for that type of project, certainly it's something that the town can pursue.
Thank you. My concern with that is if there's no way for pedestrians to get to this new shopping center other than walking on 18th Ave, that's going to be the only option until they get to that new pathway that goes to the rec center or back south to Highway 3.
Yeah, so at this point, there isn't the capacity for us to provide any alternative, but realistically speaking, once the rest of the development goes forward, that would be something we would look to construct then.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Councillor Avery and Deputy Mayor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor. And on one of the letters, Cam, from Mr. Stephen Boss, he asked about hooking his to the sanitary line. Are we working with them? Is this an opportunity now to get that section into the town infrastructure?
Yeah, I would argue that that doesn't have much to do with this particular application. Rather, the fact that this infrastructure is going into place this year as part of our water reservoir construction project is really what leads to that. But we did have an opportunity to connect the boss party with our engineering team that's working on that. And my understanding is that that's something that they're eager to move forward with.
Deputy Mayor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. Through to Cameron. So has the meeting with the Allens been scheduled yet, or has that already happened?
It occurred in early April. That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you. And so how do they feel about that now? How did the conversation go then?
I would have to ask the Brody is attending virtually, so he would be a better person to answer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Is my audio coming through all right?
It is, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor Reese. Appreciate that. Mayor Van Ryan, councillors, thank you for the time today, and Mr. Mills, thank you for that summary. I have prepared a short presentation that probably would encapsulate a few of the questions. I'm not sure if now is appropriate or if we wanted to hear from Mr. Otis. I'm assuming he wants to speak any additional flavor to the development that's being proposed, or I'm happy to proceed now. So I entirely up to what the council would like to do for ordering.
So I wasn't, anybody let me know that this was going to occur, like you have a PowerPoint presentation or just a verbal presentation?
I do have a PowerPoint presentation, it's about 8 slides, and unfortunately wasn't able to distribute that until about half an hour before your council meeting today, primarily because we didn't receive the information about the requirements till late last week. So,
Yeah, so if you could just give us your verbal explanation right now.
sure, I guess the
What
short version, I guess, Deputy, let me just
So-
turn my mic down here, getting a little bit of feedback.
Yeah, like what I'm getting at here, this isn't a public hearing, so this is kind of out of the norm for us to do this, and I agree that this is something that everybody needs to fully understand, so I'm willing to give some leeway on that. So the PowerPoint presentation will take how long?
Well, it's 11 slides. I can probably try and keep it to 11 minutes, a minute a slide. It can also give you a condensed version out of respect for the town process. I would like to note that Mr. Mills had advised that I would be able to have some floor time here. So if not here, then most certainly the recommendation that we were providing as a summary, if I wanted to, we'll say cut to the chase, was we're respectfully requesting that the council action decision option number 5, which is to table the plan until additional information can be received. And I've got a variety of different reasons for that. Even the summary that Mr. Mills provided on the consultation process isn't entirely accurate from our perspective. We had a meeting on April 8th with the proponent. I thought it was a very positive meeting. We had numerous dialogues with the Wright Construction, the representative for the proponent that's going to be doing the construction prior to that on a few occasions as well.
So
And I've had subsequently no response to the formal letter that we provided. That's part of the information.
Brody, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
with the comments that were made earlier, then I'll allow for the PowerPoint presentation if you want to start with that, and then you can speak to it.
Okay, I'll try and keep it to a tight timeline. I'll just request to share my screen then.
So Clayton, or somebody have that
He's
mic
good
on?
to go. Yeah, leave that on and let him know he's good to start.
Okay, Brody, whenever you're ready.
I've requested, I think, needs an authorization on your end there, Mayor Van Ryan. I'm not sure who's the administrator
It's
on that side. It says,
Okay,
oh, there we go.
There we go.
see it now.
there we go.
All right, yes, very briefly, as noted by Mr. Mills, I'm Brody Allen. I'm the son of Liz Allen. I grew up on this property directly to the east, which is owned by Elizabeth Allen, my mother, 3 years ago, and she's asked me to represent her. I believe council's quite familiar with who my mother is, and because she's, we'll say, rather passionate around this topic, has asked me to represent her in this process. So just a really quick summary of what I'm hoping to get across in this presentation, provide additional background as to some of the concerns that Ms. Allen has, and for chronology, that's probably what I'll speed through in the chronology out of respect for time and understanding this isn't typical. And I'll be closing with a recommended action of decision option number 5 of the options that was provided by Mr. Mills to table the conceptual plan pending the receipt of additional information. Mr. Mills did note already back in October of 24 when the initial zoning bylaw proposal was brought forward to council and eventually passed. There was some key language in there that was of particular interest to adjacent landowners, my mother included, of course, around the importance of additional landscaping beyond the standard baseline of landscaping and the eastern edge of the lot in order to provide additional separation from the adjacent parcel. And then, of course, the key language was talked about additional consideration with respect to surrounding landowners should be considered in the development permit process, which obviously we are here now at this stage. This was the initial engagement. I had reached out proactively to the town in December, inquiring on the status, knowing that there'd be a submission forthcoming. The town was good enough with Andrew at the time. He connected me with Scott Lobsinger with Right Construction, had some initial dialogue with Mr. Lobsinger, and then had some further dialogue in January where they talked about potentially meeting early April. I received an email from Mr. Mills, town administration, to have a meeting in April 4th, which was, I thought, a very positive meeting. Mr. Lotus attended, town representative attended, and of course myself and my mother attended as well. And then on April 8th, we submitted a written document of a summary of our concerns and a list of our suggested mitigation approaches to help alleviate some of my mother's concerns. And then unfortunately, that's where things went not so positively. We had no response back from Mr. Otis, no response back from Mr. Lobsinger, no dialogue from the town until we received a letter on May 12th advising that there was a development permit application in place and we were to attend and voice our concerns on the 20th. From there, I followed up with Mr. Mills to confirm the activities. He noted that there was a clerical error and the wrong letter was actually issued, and he reissued a new letter at that time that was dated May 12th, identifying the two-part process of meeting with you good folks here today, then following up with MTC in June. And I had since followed up with Mr. Lobsinger, expressing our desire to continue to work toward a mutual resolution so that they could enjoy their use case and my mother could enjoy her use case and coexist nicely as neighbors. And received a quick response back from Mr. Lobsinger that we need to talk to Mr. The proponent directly, and I followed up with him, and to date we still do not have any correspondence back. You should have a copy of the letter. Mr. Mills was good enough to print that and include that. I'll just give you the quick highlights. These are the summary of the main concerns that were identified in the letter. Typical to any development that's ongoing, of course, with the both short-term impacts and longer-term impacts. And then these were the 6 key mitigation approaches that my mother had proposed that would help alleviate her concerns, allow her to enjoy her property in residential fashion, and still let the commercial development proceed so that Mr. Ortiz can enjoy the property as he sees fits as well. Some noteworthy comments on the right. Really, items number 1 and 2 in our eyes are the only really financial commitments. The other 4 remaining are activities that were already underway that we just wanted some inclusion on, some awareness of, for example, the stormwater and drainage, water drainage, just understanding what the profiles are looking like just to make sure that everything was going to be collecting into the stormwater pools. And then we also received a note on the 5th letter about the variance. I won't go too deep into that here because it is, my understanding that's for the MPC. I just did want to note that it is a key impact point for us is that if this was known early in the process, this in my eyes should have been something that was identified to the adjacent landowners much sooner in the process so that there was an understanding that a 10-meter building was going to potentially be increased to a 15-meter building, because that is a significant difference in development scope that wasn't discussed till date. Mr. Otis did note that we're not building a high-rise, but technically Alberta Building Code classifications, 18 meters is indeed a high-rise, so we're pretty darn close. Then as of this morning, we've been just going through more documentation. As noted, I got this late last week, so I've been trying to catch up and understand the status of the application. I was actually disappointed to see that there was communications from Mr. Mills to Mr. Otis. That was a summary letter as part of the development application, classifying the concerns that for Ms. Allen and Mr. Boss, combining them into one document. And I do feel it was a misrepresentation of what the concerns were of my mother in particular, and more crucially, request number 1 of the fence, which is probably her top priority, which helps alleviate a lot of the concerns for, you know, the dust, the debris, some of the foot traffic even that Mayor Van Ryan was noting earlier in his discussions. And then there was another letter back from Mr. Otis to Mr. Mills, which is also part of your development package, May 14th. So correspondence after the development application was in, and obviously had the opportunity to communicate with the town, but still no communications with my mother or myself in the process, which was disappointing because we were quite optimistic we could work with Mr. Mill or Mr. Otis in finding a solution. The newest site plan, as noted in the description, if I go have a quick look here, I do believe I have a visual. Though appreciated, I like the intent. I'll zoom in on this. If you look at the solution that was provided by Mr. Otis, we've got a 50-foot fence that's 8 feet high that's intended to be a light screen. Again, though appreciated, the light screen in our eyes, the fence's objective does a lot more than light screening. And even at this current design with 50 feet and these trucks backing in, we'll have headlight coming through on this side. We see the chain link fences, a garbage collector as an easy jump for kids to trespass. Back to the overall list of concerns, a proper wood board fence for the length of the property was one of our important topics. Just general summary of the concerns with the developer. Again, super disappointing that there's been no communication, no response since the letter that was sent. Felt like there was a initial positive meeting and then no traction after that. And though it's acknowledged and appreciated that there's some partial attempts in addressing concerns, and ultimately our ask is that all 6 items have that level of communication, written correspondence that help with the development. Town administration, as I talked about, we're disappointed that Mr. Mills sent a summary on our behalf. I understand the intent. Though the intent was appreciated, as Mr. Mills noted himself, his role should be as facilitator in this process, not necessarily a voice, and that minimum I'm sure would have appreciated to have a CC on that communication of what was unfolding there. If there's maybe process that I'm not aware of that is town of Coldale related, then I'll retract that, but at this point it's not a practice that I've typically seen in the past. And yeah, I think, you know, for us it's this overall town strategic plan at this point, in my eyes, hasn't really been met by administration. Intent's been good, but we've really gone flat since April 8th, and I feel like this proposal has been quite rushed. And as a quick summary, once again, thank you, Mayor Van Ryan, for allowing this presentation. Yes, my mother does have a formal objection filed with the town on this particular proposal. However, I would like to be very clear and reiterate there's still a continued desire and willingness to cooperate. And though my mother would be quite pleased with option 4, she's a realist and she understands that this property was purchased 50 years ago. And at some point the town will and should expand, and it's a sign of progress. So we're respectfully requesting that the town council action and vote option 5 to table this plan until such time as proper additional information can be brought forward. And in my eyes, for clarity and definition, I believe the additional information in this case would be correspondence directly between myself and Mr. Otis working through possible concerns. I'm not on board with Mr. Mills' suggestions for option 1, 2, 3 because unfortunately this last month has demonstrated a communication breakdown between the three parties, and my preference would be to work directly with Mr. Otis and have Mr. Mills play the role of facilitator in the process. And thank you very much for your time and allowing me to go a little out of order today.
Thank you,
I will
Mr.
entertain questions from anyone, please.
No, that'll be it for your presentation. I appreciate you doing that. And so with the amount of information and the size of this project, I want to make sure that this council gets this right, that we leave no stone unturned. So I'll open it up to members of council. Any questions, comments to our presenter? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. My question actually is directed to Cam Mills, if I may.
Yes.
Is that all right? Mr. Mills, just two questions. Number one, you mentioned a waiver earlier that might have to come to MPC. Would you help us just remind me what that waiver might be?
Thank you. Yes. And so in this case, the way the direct control bylaw was written was that outside of the specific portions of the bylaw with respect to uses, the commercial district regulations are taken into effect. And so there is, generally speaking, a 10-meter height requirement in those particular areas. Not to say that it can't go beyond that, but that does push it into the realm of a discretionary use, which requires MPC consideration. And so in this case, the development permit paperwork, when we did receive it, did note the potential for building height as high as 15 meters. And so that would require, that particular issue would require MPC consideration. There's nothing else about the application that would force us into that situation. So there's nothing about the uses or the site layout or anything like that that requires MPC's consideration. It's simply that one note in the application that calls for building height.
Thank you. My second question is with regards to the fence. Not that it's a deal breaker, but would there be an opportunity for us to make that a 10-foot fence rather than an 8-foot fence? I think that's something we can do quite easily.
Yeah, so to address that and to address some of the statements made by Mr. Allen, the idea here, again, is that we had the opportunity for the proponent to meet directly with the adjacent landowners to hear their concerns and then to come back with a development application where the proponent has an opportunity to sit in front of council and provide for their proposal, which considers those concerns. The intention, and this has been clearly communicated from my perspective, is never to enter into a negotiation between adjacent landowners and the proponent. That would be protracted over a period of time. As highlighted in my presentation, this is a parcel of land that we've been discussing actively from a development perspective dating back to 2018. We've had annexation hearings, we've had area structure plan hearings, we've had rezoning hearings, and now we're having the hearing here today on the development permit application. In addition to that, and going above and beyond that, and above and beyond any requirements which are typical, we are providing for direct landowner consultation with respect to the development permit itself, and that's what the early April meetings fundamentally were. The summary letter that was provided, which doesn't get into the specific details Mr. Allen appears to be looking for, was exactly that. It was a summary of communication that Mr. Otis, as the proponent, would have already had, but it was simply intended as a reminder that Mr. Otis, in his design proposal, should consider those issues raised at those meetings that were held between the two parties, at which the town was also present, and provide that for an update within their proposal. Ultimately, version 10, which is what you see before you, considers some but not all of the requests made by both landowners, and the proponent's position is that what they've provided here is a reasonable accommodation to address the concerns from their perspective. Now it is council's opportunity to consider whether or not the proponent has done enough to balance the need for making a project financially feasible and also meeting the requirements that we've set out for the development area, and on top of that addressing those adjacent landowner concerns. So a long answer to a very short question. And so should council, again, we have the opportunity in that recommendation to provide for additional direction. That's what that option 2 is. So for example, if council wanted to address the fence specifically and to say, yes, administration, we support the proposal, but we want to see this out of the fence. We want to see it be more than 50 feet. We want to see it be this much higher. That provides the opportunity to do so. The issue of the fence is fundamentally one of balancing Ms. Allen's concerns, and I think legitimate concerns about the direction of the offloading traffic, and pointing out that the potential for loading will provide potentially some light pollution into their property. And for that reason, the proponent has provided for that 8-foot tall, which is higher than a typical 6-foot fence of a solid wooden board along that space where that type of light pollution has the ability to occur. The request, again, from my perspective of going along the entire eastern boundary, we're talking about several hundred feet. The cost of that type of wooden fence is not small, and so while that is a potential thing that council could ask for, I think council also needs to be aware that that is going to drive up potentially the cost of the development as well. And so we suggest that we provide some balance to that. But again, council has the opportunity to consider that as part of any recommendation they make.
Thank you. Just before Councillor Avery has a question or comment, to be fair, we had Mr. Allen speak. My understanding is that the developer, Brian Otis, is on line as well. Does he wish to have a opportunity to speak? Brian, we can't hear you right now. Just might have to turn your mic on. Still can't hear you.
Nope.
Well, the developer is figuring out his microphone. I'll let Councillor Avery ask his question.
Thank you, Mayor. Cam, just a couple questions. So what would be the implications of option 5? And what further information would we be looking at to table this? Because it seems like a very complex package that provides us with the information. And is it our obligation to facilitate these type of talks?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. So it's not necessarily clear. Some of the information would have to do with, for example, potentially a detailed landscaping plan where we get down to the specific caliper of trees or the specific type of vegetation. Administration's position really here is that once we get into that level of detail, that's really not something that's necessarily appropriate to be considered at a high level. We think that generally speaking, providing for a condition on the permit that requires the provision of that satisfactory to administration in order for us to consider that plan in greater detail is sufficient. I think we've been very clear that the requirement for landscaping in this particular proposal is being taken seriously by us, and that can be seen when you look at the developer's proposal. Again, we're talking about when you consider the western portion, we've got 70 feet of landscaping from the western boundary moving towards the east. We've got a 15-foot buffer along the eastern edge of the property. Very often there would be no landscaping in those particular areas. Landscaping is typically reserved for along roadways in this case. So, and we're also showing some intentions for tree coverage there. So from my perspective, tabling some of these issues we're talking about, again, strictly from my perspective, the potential for some relatively micro issues. And if the call is for the balance we always have with these things, just to speak perhaps more colloquially, the difficulty here is finding the balance, from my perspective, of requesting information that's potentially expensive to obtain. So, for example, to hire a landscaper to do a detailed plan of something and potentially spending $10,000 or $15,000 to talk about the difference between this tree and this tree, only for the sort of general proposal to be thrown out because we just say no, we don't like the proposal, right? And so if we're going to make the decision that says, no, we just don't like the size of the buildings or the massing of the buildings to make someone spend thousands of dollars on something that we see as sort of detailed in nature is not necessarily conducive with the way we typically do business, which tries to be sort of, recognize, the investment that a potential developer is making and try to balance that with addressing some of the concerns that are received. So tabling remains an option, certainly, and certainly something that council can do. From my perspective, we do have sufficient information to make a decision in this matter.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? So I'll repeat the motion options one more time.
Sorry, we do have representatives, so consultants of the developers in the room. So if Brian isn't able to speak, either Scott or Edwin potentially could answer some concerns, sort of some questions of council should they have them.
Well, again, this isn't a public hearing, but because we gave Mr. Allen an opportunity to speak, I think it's only fair for the developer. So if you want to join Cameron Mills at the presenter's desk here, please. Introduce yourself, who you're with, and you can let us know what Brian has been texting you.
Thank you. Yeah, apologies for the communication issues. I'm Scott Lobsinger from Wright Construction Western.
Closer to your microphone, please.
Certainly. Apologies. I've worked for Brian a few times on other developments, one most recently in Tabor. So we're familiar with the Southern Alberta market. I'm from Calgary, and so just to speak directly to Brody's issues on the breakdown in communication, there was never an intent to exclude them from the conversation of the development. In fact, the last communications I had with them were very positive, and we're entertaining everything that we can that makes sense financially for the project, and I respect the fact that Mrs. Allen has been living there for her entire life, and we certainly don't want to disrupt her, especially at whatever stage she is. That's never the intent, and we're not here to nickel and dime. And if I don't want to go spending all of Brian's money trying to make everybody happy, but as an example, the building elevation is probably around 11 meters, and that's because of a sign on the front of the building. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but the potential root tenant is BYLAWS, right? So on the front of a Shoppers, if you recall, if you've ever seen one, which I'm sure you all have, that parapet sign is about 3 meters tall. It's very tall. The letters are very large. You can see it from a ways away. That's actually what's taller. The building itself is not much taller than 10 meters. And the fence, of course, we'd love to accommodate the fence. I think that's something we consider. And we moved the buildings and lost thousands of square feet as a consideration towards the Allens. It's not the smartest move to have the buildings on running east-west across the north part of the property, but because of the constraints of the site, the high-pressure gas line by ATCO, and Mrs. Allen's concerns, Brian Otis immediately thought, well, maybe I can figure this out. And he went back to the drawing table and made some of the changes. That's a significant cost impact on this development. Significant, right? So the desire here would be to, of course, listen to all the neighbors. I'm sitting next to, Lost Landscapes, who I've worked with before in a previous project. We've hired them before, so we're not here to make enemies. We want to accommodate, but we certainly can't have a few small issues, as you've mentioned, hijack an entire like multi-million-dollar development, especially considering we are considering all of them, as many of them as we possibly can. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. And just one question. So you said the building height would be approximately 11 meters, and then the sign would be the variance. So now over to Cam. Is this not just something, it doesn't have to go to MPC because you guys can approve a 10% variance on that height? And the sign would be something that comes to MPC?
That is correct. So the application itself has a checkbox on it where it says indicate building height, and it is there's a note there that says 15 meters. So I believe the intention of the proponent, and I could be wrong, was probably just to provide for some sort of buffer to recognize in excess of 10 meters. I don't think the intention is to build a 15-meter building, but I have to work with the document I have in front of me. So if a more comprehensive building design comes forward that does not require a height variance, then the requirement to go to MPC will also go out the window.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, I just want to make sure that council is under the understanding that we can table this till our July 2nd meeting, or we can deal with it tonight. And it's the will of council how they want to do this. And I'm going to give the options for motions. And if somebody cares to sponsor any of them, and then we'll have a vote on it accordingly. So, motion option 1, approve the conceptual plan confirming administration's authorization to issue a permit subject to conditions deemed necessary to provide for orderly and appropriate development. Option 2, or I should say the second option, provide direction to administration on any specific conditions of the development they feel are necessary to address any issues arising from the information contained in this agenda package, or which was brought to light as part of the public disclosure, discourse, I should say, which we had just now. And then the third option, direct administration to move forward with bringing the application to the next available meeting of MPC for consideration of the question of building height variance, which we just addressed as well. Or option 4, approve the conceptual plan of the development application and instruct administration to proceed with the application for the MPC meeting on June 11th, 2025. Or the final option is to table this discussion until the July 2nd meeting, regular council meeting, if there's any other information that needs to be brought forward. So does anybody care to sponsor option 1? And again, I'll say it, approve the conceptual plan confirming administration's authorization to issue a permit subject to conditions deemed necessary to provide for orderly and appropriate development. Councillor Saylor makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is defeated. Motion number 2, provide direction to administration on any specific conditions of development they feel are necessary to address any issues arising from the information contained in this agenda package or which was brought to light as part of the public discourse. Anybody care to sponsor that motion? Councillor Chapman makes that motion.
Sorry, so the intention of how this was written was to provide number 2, to provide council with the opportunity to provide that specific direction. So,
Thank you. I'll just add to that, Mayor, if I may, that we spoke about a number of considerations that were reflective of tonight's presentations, and one of them being the fence situation. So if we could have that addressed as part of the conditions of development, I think that that's fair enough for all parties engaged. And I don't know if that's something that you would agree to, Scott, if that's in your development plan, that could be considered. And I think that the ATCO gas line situation is something that's off the table. And I think that the positions of the property are as favored by all parties, from what I'm hearing tonight. So I would just add that piece into motion number 2.
Thank you. So, Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. Aren't them 3 options all together and as one? As one condition or option?
Yeah, the request from administration was that we treated them as 3 separate motions. But I'm going to reach out to our CAO now for some clarification to move forward with this now.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in looking at the decision options that are crafted, so 1 through 3, you could say serves as a bundle. And if council is not prepared to provide specific feedback with respect to what conditions that they would like to change about the proposal, then my suggestion would that this be tabled to the next council meeting, that being June 9th. Unless council has a specific resolution with where they'd like to weigh in on the conditions that we would tie to the permit. So I'm just throwing that out there as a question. Is council prepared to provide those specifics? Because if the motion was defeated for the first point, then some direction is required as to where we're going from there.
Exactly. Councillor Avery.
Thanks. And just for clarity, Kaylin, so if we table this, council needs to be prepared to ask what additional information they want. It can't be to mitigate an issue between a developer and the landowners around that. That's an administrative duty to do that. So what information, if we're going to table this, are we looking for? This is a complex package. So I need clarity, because I don't know what else yourself and Cameron can provide me with this development. Everything, we've got 10 versions of where they started with version 1 to version 10. And I'm very unclear of what we're looking for as a group sitting up here to, we zoned this as direct control. So we knew what was going to go into it, and we didn't approve the first version of something. I'm looking for clarity, because you're recommending tabling it. So what more can we be looking for?
Through the chair to Councillor Avery, I don't know that I'm recommending tabling. It's just I'm going off of the clue that the first motion was defeated, and that in the absence of more specifics, that seems to be the direction from the majority of council. Asking for additional time to analyze a complex file is a justifiable reason in and of itself. It doesn't necessarily have to have specific items for us to look into. However, now would be a good time for us as an admin to know that. But this is a significant project. This is a complex project. And order of magnitude, it's big scale for the developer who's the investor. Order of magnitude, it's big scale for neighboring landowners. And order of magnitude, it's big scale for the town of Coaldale, because of the infrastructure dominoes that are set forth once this development takes place. And so, given the gravity of a project this size, if council is of the opinion that more time to analyze the information that you have already, that is a sufficient reason for council to make a tabling motion, if that helps.
Councillor Beekman.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess first question is we could bring this back to the June 9th because before the June 30th / July 2nd meeting was what was being thrown. Can this come back June 9th?
If I may, yeah, there would be no requirement for advertising or additional considerations. So the next available meeting would be fine.
Okay, fair. Thank you. Because I mean, speaking in support of tabling, is simply I feel we got thrown a bit of a curveball tonight. And for myself to make a decision of this magnitude, I'd like a little bit more time to digest, the additional information that we weren't prepared for tonight. So,
Councillor Beekman, you care to make a motion?
I will rescind my motion I made a motion to approve number 2. So I'll rescind that motion and then we can go there.
We have to get past number 1 first here. So to mitigate that option is to table. So before you can make the motion and then before I call the question, Deputy Mayor Reese has a comment to make.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. And through to Cameron. If we do table this, my concern, I mean, there's a lot to digest here. It is very complex, as we've already said. My concern is also the adjacent landowner, what their position now is after these discussions, if there will be some more communication with them. I think that would give some time to also have that communication take place if that's what's needed with the Allens.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Councillor Beekman's motion to table? Councillor Beekman.
Can I just want to make an addition to that motion that we table the conceptual plan pending the receipt of additional information and bring the topic back for June 9th regular council meeting. I'd like it specified that we bring it back on the 9th.
Kaylin, did you capture that motion?
I believe so, but we're going to just do a little bit of academic review here. So there's a tabling. I'm
just going to let Councillor Avery ask his question while you finish wordsmithing that.
Thank you again. And through to Councillor Beekman, what additional information? What, like you just said you wanted an amendment to that motion. What additional information is our administration to bring to us? What additional information was presented to us tonight that was not in this package? Everything that was presented by Mr. Allen was in our package. So I don't yes, it's a complex file. I spent a lot of time going through this file. So what additional information are we requesting? We need to be clear to our administration what we need to make this decision on June 9th rather than today.
Through to Councillor Avery, I think just confidence in my decision. Personally, that's where I'm lying with this. Again, I feel that there was a curveball thrown at us tonight a little bit, and I do not feel 100% confident in supporting decision 1. If I'm to support decision 1, I'd like the comfortability of digesting.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments regarding Councillor Beekman's tabling motion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of tabling? Opposed? Motion is carried to table. And that will be for what date then, Kaylin?
That'll be for the regular council meeting of June 9th, 25.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. Yes.
Is there any chance that we can get Mr. Allen's PowerPoint sent to each one of us?
We can ask Cameron Mills to make that happen, yes?
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
But again, this is not a public hearing. Okay, so we can move on to information items. We have Councillor Avery.
So keep in mind that PowerPoint is a matter of opinion. We also had a presenter here tonight that presented their facts as well. So you're asking for something that is a matter of opinion from the neighbor to make, I understand we need all the information to make the decision, but that's their opinion on the communication. Maybe we should ask Mr. Otis to provide the same thing in a PowerPoint. So you guys have that information as well.
And we'll relay that information through Kaylin to administration. Moving on. Information items. Information item 12.1, we have the Coaldale Public Library May-June of 2025 newsletter. 12.2, we have MLA Grant Hunter's Mayors and Reeves report. 12.3, we have the meeting minutes from March 19th for the pause group. Are there any questions or comments on either of those three information items? Seeing none, could I get someone to make a motion that council receive items 12.1, 12.2, and 12.3 as information? Councillor Pickering. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. That concludes the open portion of the meeting. I will require a motion that council move into closed session at 6:50 p.m. in accordance with section 197-4-B of the Municipal Government Act to discuss matters exempt from disclosure for items 13.1 and 13.2, subject to section 16, business interests of a third party, and section 25, economic and other interests of a public body. Item 13.3, subject to section 23, local public body confidences, and section 24, advice from officials. Deputy Mayor Reeves makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We will take a 5-minute break.